so far away on the deep and the dark and the African plains, where the sun beats down and it scorches your skin, and the dust would rise as you kick along the road, there was a woman. And Jalara was her name, and she lived in a house by the side of the river, and she lived in the village, and she lived very well, and she lived with her husband, and they could live well. But she did all of the work. It was on her back that the work would fall, and she would cook, and she would clean, and she would work in the garden and in the fields and look after the cows and the sheep. Well, her husband, he would rest because he loved to sleep. Oh, he liked the rewards, but he didn't like to have to do the work. And in that village there were many children, and in Jalara, well, she would look after all of the children who were there, and she would be like their older sister, but she would never be a mother to them, because she had no children of her own. And her skin was as velvety as the night, and she was as beautiful to behold as anyone you would ever see in all of your life. And her smile always had a sad turn to its corner, because she had no children of her own. And every day when she had finished her work, and she'd cooked and cleaned, and she'd worked in the field, she would go to the base of the great mountain that was there, and she would stand and she would dance. And as she danced, she would call to the wise woman who lived at the top of the mountain and say, "Why is it that I cannot have a child, O wise woman? Please make it so that I can have a child." But the wise woman was very like Jalara's husband, because she liked to sleep. And better than sleeping, she liked to eat. And then Jalara would go to that place, and she would shout and scream and yell and sing and dance. And she danced this way and that and there and here, and her dance was beautiful to behold. But her feet would kick up the dust, and the dust would rise, and the dust would go right up the mountain. And there was the wise old woman, and she would be asleep, and she would be covered in dust, and she would scream down at Jalara and say, "Oh, woman, go and do your dance elsewhere. There are other things that you can have in this world other than children. Now go away and leave me alone." And Jalara would hear her, and she would go back, and she would go to her sleep, and she would cry herself to sleep, wishing and hoping that she would have a child. And as the next sun rose, her husband would push her out of the house and tell her that she needed to go and do the work, while he lay and slept. But when she'd finished her work, again she would go across the plains and stand at the base of the mountain, and she would dance a beautiful dance and sway and swing and move her arms and her body. And it was beautiful to behold, almost as beautiful as her face. And she would sing and she would shout and say to the wise woman, "Oh, why is it that I cannot have a child of my own?" And she would dance this way and that and here and there, and then she would dance and sing, and that wise woman would be sitting down to eat her meat. And the dust would rise from the dry African plain, and up it would go, and she would shout down and say, "Jalara, there's better things in this world than children. You must go away from this place. My food is spoiled. You spoil my sleep. Now go away, otherwise you will have a child." And you would have to think about how you would treat that child. And then Jalara would go away from that place, and the tears would roll down her dust-stained cheeks. And she would go to her sleep and cry and fall asleep and dream of having a child in her arms. And the very next day she would go out to her work. But when she had finished, she would go to the base of the mountain, and she would dance this way and that, and she would move her arms and move her hips and sway with her feet, and she would sing and shout and scream and yell, and the song was beautiful to hear, almost as beautiful as her face. And when she would go, "Oh, wise woman, why is it? Why can I not have a child?" Well, the wise woman had been walking. The wise woman had had her food spoiled, and she said, "Oh, Jalara, if you want a child, then a child you shall have. But trust me, you will have to decide how you will look after it." Well, when Angelara heard this, she danced better and she shouted, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, wise woman. Thank you, I always wanted a child, a boy or a girl. I don't care what it looks like." But the wise woman had a smile on her face. And the wise woman wasn't a terrible woman, but she did like to play tricks on the people of the village. And that night, Angelara went to her sleep, and she did dream about having a child. And her dreams weren't always sweet. And when she awoke, she didn't open up her eyes because she felt something that ran across her belly, and it felt like an arm, and she wasn't sure. And she didn't really want to open her eyes to look. But she looked right down, and what did she see, smiling up at her? 2 round eyes. A large open mouth with a smile on its lips, but a thin, black, forked tongue that lashed this way and that. And it had a smile on its face, and this child, this baby that was there, that was lying upon her belly, was covered in scales, black, shining scales. Because Angelara, she'd been given a child by the wise woman who lived on the mountain, but this was a snake child, blacker than the night, and it lay there, lying across her belly, smiling up at her. And Angelara looked at this snake child and said, "Oh, Kihilihili, 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 oh, you are the most beautiful child in all of the world." And she cuddled it close to her, and she jumped up and she began to dance this way and that, and she smiled and she sang and she said, "Husband, look, we've been given a child. Oh, look at how beautiful he is." Well, her husband woke up, and when he looked and he saw that snake child in her arms, he picked up a shovel, he picked up that spade, and he ran towards her, and he was about to hit that child from out of her arms, and she said, "No, stop! This is what the wise woman has given us. This is what she's granted to us. We have a child, we have a son. Kihilihili is his name, for snake boy is what Kihilihili means, and he is our child." But her husband was not pleased. "I will not have a snake boy in my home. I will go and I will see all of the wise people of our village and see what it is that they say." And her husband ran from out of their kraal, and he went and he sat down with the wise men and the wise women of the village. And the wise women of the village all said, "Oh, Angelara's husband, you have indeed been blessed by a special child, and you must love him, and you must hold him, and you must sing to him, and you must hold him close to your breast, and you must sing to him and feed him, and he is your son, and he is a great son." Well, Angelara's husband was so shocked at what they said. He said, "I will do no such thing. I will not have a snake boy for a child. He will not stay in my home." And all of the wise men of the village nodded their heads and said, "Oh, Angelara's husband, you are right. You cannot have a snake boy live inside of your house. You must take him, and you must dig a hole right by the side of the river and dig it deep. And you must take not 1, not 2, not 5, not 10, but 12 trees, and cut them down, and place them side by side, and push them deep into the ground by the side of the hole that you have dug by the side of the river, and you must put your son, Kihilihili, inside of that place, and you must not let him come back. If your wife wishes to feed him, if your wife wants to give him food, if your wife wishes to sing to him or cuddle him, then that is her choice." Well, Angelara's husband did not listen to the wise women of the village. He listened only to those things that he wanted, and he ran back and he lied to his wife, and he said, "I have been told by the wise men and women of this village to take Kihilihili and put him in a pit, and surround that pit not by 1, not by 2, not by 5, not by 10, but by 12 trees, and he will be placed inside of that place. And if you choose to feed him, if you choose to bring him food, then that is your choice, but he will never enter into my house again." And Jalara was sad when she heard this. What she did as a husband had been told, or at least how she thought he had been told, and the pit was dug, and Angelara cried, and the trees were cut down, 1 and 2 and 5 and 10 and 12, and they were placed deep into the ground around that pit, and Kihilihili was placed inside. And Jalara would go every night, and she would sing a sweet song and dance a sweet dance that was so beautiful to behold. And she would dance with Kihilihili in her arms, and she would feed him, and she would bring him food, and Kihilihili grew stronger and taller, and he would move by himself when his mother wasn't there. He would slip and slither through all of those great trees, and he would lie in the tall green grass by the side of the river, and he would look out, and he would see the chief's son, and he would see the chief's daughter, and they would play in the water, and he wished that he could be just like them. And sometimes he would see the chief's daughter collecting water in a great pot that she placed on her head, and Namebi was her name, and she was beautiful to look at, nearly as beautiful as Angelara. And with time, Kihilihili loved this girl, Namebi. Oh, she was beautiful. But soon he grew so big that he couldn't slip, and he couldn't slither between those logs, and to try and get to see her, he would pull himself tall and strong and straight, and he would peer over all of the trees that were there by the side of the pit. And one day he stretched so tall, he stretched so strong, that all of that great black scaly skin split from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail, and out stepped a beautiful, tall, strong young man. And he climbed out of that pit and over those trees, and he took that snake skin right under his arm, and he walked back to the town, and everyone shouted and everyone danced, and everyone was so pleased to see this handsome, strong young man walking into their village. And as he walked through the village, Angelara walked up to him, and he stood in front of her and said, "Well, mother, here I am. I am your son, and I am proud to call you my mother, for you sang to me and you danced with me, and you held me in your arms and you fed me. And now I have returned." Angelara danced around to see her son return to her, but she'd loved him when he was a snake boy, and she loved him just the same now that he was returned to her as a good and tall and strong, beautiful young man. But Angelara's husband, when he saw his son as a tall, strong young man, he rubbed his hands together and said, "Oh, my son, you are welcome inside of my house. Come and sit down by the side of my fire." But Kihilihili said, "No. When I was a snake boy, you did not want to hold me. You did not want to feed me. You dug a pit and threw me in, and made it so that I was far away from the town. I will not come into your home. My son, but you can help me in the field. You can help me do all of the work. But Kihilihili turned round and said, Father, all of the work? How much of the work do you do? And how much of the work is done by my mother? And Jalara's husband was shamed by this. Well, where will you live? Said Jalara's husband. Oh, I will decide where I live when I have married the chief's daughter. Ha! The chief's daughter, said Jalara's husband. You have no more chance of marrying the chief's daughter than I have of climbing into the sky. You have no gold. You have no silver. You have no cows. You have no sheep. And the Mebi will never look at the likes of you. You're worthless. If you will not live in my house, then you can go away. Kihilihili turned, and his eyes narrowed, and he looked at his father and said, So I'm worthless, father, because I have no gold? I'm worthless because I have no silver? I'm worthless because I have no cows or sheep? Is that what you tell me? Yes, said his father. Then you should watch. And Kihilihili took that black, scaly snakeskin from underneath his arm, and he ripped out one handful of snakeskin and threw it onto a fire. And the fire burned red, and great clouds of smoke came out of it. And there in the middle of the fire was a pot of gold. Said Kihilihili's father, Oh, my son, I'm very sorry. Oh, I like the look of that gold that you have. I'm sorry that I said that you were worthless, but still you would need more than that. And Kihilihili reached down and pulled another handful of snakeskin and threw it in the fire, and the fire burned with flames that went right up to the sky, and great clouds of smoke came out, and when the smoke had cleared there was a pot of silver. Oh, my son, gold and silver! I'm sorry what I said. You are more than welcome to come and live in my house. No, father, even with gold and silver, I would not live inside of your house. You would not hold me. You would not feed me. You would not sing to me. You would not dance with me. Well, in that case, said Kihilihili's father, get away, you're worth nothing to me. And you need more than gold and silver to marry Namebi. Oh, I need more. Yes, said his father. And he tore a handful of snakeskin and threw it into the fire, and another, and out came 3 cows, and another handful, and another, and another, and another, and another, and cows and sheep came out of that fire. And this time Kihilihili's father rubbed his hands together and said, Oh, my son, I've been so hasty. You have got many things. I'm sorry that I called you worthless. You are more than welcome to come and live in my house. And Kihilihili said, No. You would not sit with me. You would not feed me. You sent me far away from this place, and you lied to my mother. I would no more live in your house than I would fly to the moon. Kihilihili's father was shamed and shocked by this, and he realized that he'd been so hasty in judging his son, and he wished that he had been kinder to him. But Kihilihili went to Namebi, the chief's daughter, and she liked what she saw, for she had seen him when he was a snake boy, and she liked him, no matter what he looked like. And the two of them were married, but they didn't live inside of the town, not close to Kihilihili's father. They moved and built themselves a kraal of their own. And they had many children, and Jalara lived with them and helped them to bring their children up. And Kihilihili lived to be an old man, and everyone respected him, and thought that he was the wisest of all of the men who lived in that place. And they would come and they would ask him. They would ask him for advice. They would ask him for his wisdom. And he would always tell them the same thing. No matter what it is that someone looks like, it is not how they look, but it is how they are. And even if someone looks as if they have no worth at all, no gold, no silver, no profit you could see, they are always worth whatever it is that they hold in their heart. For it is not what they have, it is who they are.